Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges, as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Welcome, everyone, to the next chapter with Charlie. My guest today is author, poet, and ordinary mystic, Blair Abee.
Maybe.
And Blair has written 5 award-winning books and dozens of articles on meditation and manifestation. Blair describes himself this way: I am an explorer of life who has discovered a variety of techniques, tools, and ideas that I think you will find useful in your own personal development. With that, let's bring Blair on the show. Blair Abee. Sorry, I apologize for the mispronunciation of your name, but welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Charlie, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, good. We had a nice chat a couple days ago, I think.
Yeah.
Yesterday or a couple days. I've lost track. Um, you know where I'd like to start? I'd like to, you know, sometimes, you start shows and, you kind of get to know each other and you kind of BS around and all that. I'm going to jump right into it. You're the kind of guy I think, let's just jump right into it. You ready to go deep? You got your
Sure.
aqua
Absolutely.
lung on so we can go deep and stay down long. So let's start with a very, well, it is a ponderous idea. And you are very interested in the idea that we are all eternal beings. I kind of have an idea what you mean, but I think a lot of us in the audience don't know what you mean by eternal beings. Well, why don't you talk about that to me?
It's my experience that we're all sparks of God. That we perhaps were generated, at the Big Bang, and that we will continue on. I subscribe to reincarnation, and have come to realize that we come back. We come here to learn lessons. We come back over and over until we get the lessons right. And perhaps at some point in that reincarnation cycle, we learn enough that we have the choice to go on or to come back and be of service to humanity. And perhaps instead go on to another adventure if we decide not to come back. So that's what I think of as myself as an eternal being, that we are eternal beings and that we come to planet Earth and that we insert ourselves in these amazingly complicated biomechanical vehicles that we drive around with a processor, computer processor on board, our mind. But that as human beings, that's not all we are. And I think most of us know that there's something else going on. Perhaps many of us know that we have a higher consciousness or a soul, but many of us are not in touch with that until something happens. Sometimes it's a trauma that forces us to take a deep dive. Sometimes it's some experience, some illumination, and that sets up a curiosity of, well, what's that all about? And it's the opening to that possibility that begins to open up the opportunity to develop a relationship with our soul. And that's the experience that I had about 10 years ago after a traumatic job situation in which I took a deep dive into my meditation practice because I'd been meditating since 1972.
So a long time.
Long time. And then started doing journaling, what I would call spiritual journaling, and just writing for therapy more than anything. And in the process, information just seemed to start to flow that I maybe was familiar with, but hadn't had the experience of. In some cases, wasn't familiar with. And after about 150,000 words of journaling, I realized that I had material for books.
You had a
And
book. Yeah.
yeah, and that
Yeah.
that was the source of my starting a career as an author. I hadn't intended to, wasn't intending to write books, um, but sometimes situations like occurred with me are what needs to happen in order to take a 90-degree turn from where we might be headed into something new. Um, and it was as if my soul, which I call high C, higher consciousness, it's affectionately called high C. Um, my high C wanted me to stop doing what I was doing, wanted me to recognize it, and wanted me to go off in another direction. Um, so now, and what ended up happening was that I did a, I did a whistleblowing on a situation, and there was an investigation done, and my boss,
This was
who was
at
a,
work. This was when you were
was at work,
working. Yeah.
my boss, who was really a psychopath,
Oh,
was
really?
investigated, and she was fired. But they fired me too, and they said
Why?
that
I mean, how did they just, I mean, legally, can they do that? I mean, does that,
they could do it. Um, I was almost at, but not quite at my 1 year um, point, and I didn't realize this, where I would have been protected to some degree. Um, So, they said I was a troublemaker. Well, in a way, I was because I made trouble for them by exposing the situation that was going badly, and they weren't paying attention to. And so, my trajectory of a 20-year career in my profession just ended like that. And of course, that was a huge ego blow, and it was a blow to my income. um,
yeah,
and
I think that is a blow to your income. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, lots of things had to change. Um, but, as I look back at it, not only do I forgive those people, but I actually thank them because um, what happened was what needed to happen, and what happened has been such a blessing. Um, so I think that's one of the things to take away from traumatic situations, like I'm speaking of, is that there's an opportunity to reinvent yourself when something like that happens, and to find out what's mm, what's on the other side of that. What's the bigger picture? Perhaps even what's the eternal being or uh, uh, soul intent for such occurrences, and to take the opportunity to explore perhaps meditation. My way of thinking, meditation is the most direct path to spiritual growth and evolution. Um, and if you read my books, especially the meditation book, you'll find that I offer some tools that people can explore to um, perhaps have a similar experience to the experience that I have, a breakthrough, um, and um, uh, a soul contact, and um, either starting on your spiritual path or an acceleration of your spiritual path. Um, so
Tell me
that's a
now.
long answer to your question, I understand, but
Yeah, it is.
just
It's very, and it's, and it just, as we talked, it brings up a ton of questions. One question I ask when I hear someone tell me they heard their soul speak to them, or they
yes.
felt, or whatever, whether it's audible or a sensation or an idea. How does one know that's of God, and that's just not anxiety or whatever's going on in the moment, making one just saying, okay, I got to make a change? Or is that just all part of the process?
Excuse me. Well, I think it is part of a process, and since none of us are really taught from childhood that this is possible, um, none of our teachers know, none of our parents know, none of our spiritual leaders know. Therefore, we don't get much training in making soul contact. But when it begins to happen, it's a it's that still small voice, or it's that flow through your fingertips onto the computer screen if you're doing sacred journaling, um, or it's an intuition. Um, I mean, you know that it's not that it's out of the ordinary, and it's a clue to pursue it because soul wants us to have a relationship with it. It's waiting for us to open to that possibility, and so by opening to that possibility and exploring it in some fashion, um, the experience just gets bigger and bigger. It gets more and more concrete. It gets more and more real. Um, and as a result, um, in a way, your life really changes. That is, your point of view changes, your understanding about life changes, and that you've got this companion, if you will, friend, mentor, um, to teach and to work with and to develop a relationship with, and perhaps even to, it's been my experience, to go go before me to smooth out the path, um, to provide direction. Um, so, um, all I can say is this has been my experience. I've worked with people, they've had a similar experience. It's a matter of opening up to it and being there. And of course, I think that's what all of our master spiritual teachers or master teachers who we're talking about, they were all pointing in the direction of, um, um, you know, having the same experience that they had. Not
Yeah.
that they were
Different content, but same experience.
same experience. That's right. Everybody has a different content, but it's the same experience of
Tell,
awakening.
tell me now. I know you're a theist, and
Yes,
that you have a Christian background. Is that,
correct.
as both of us? My Christian is in mystical theology, which is the last 6 years, and you identified with that. What is the relationship between the soul and, let's just talk from, we can talk from a Christian, we could talk because we both embrace other religions, and that there
Yes.
is a deity, there is something apart from us that is imparting assistance and aid. What is the correlation between the soul and the divine?
Um, well, they're in a way the same. To
Okay.
me, soul is the divine for me personally, whereas God or the all
Yes.
is universal. Soul is my personal guardian, if you will, my personal relationship with the divine. And soul is the divine then. In fact, I would even say, and this is something that I don't know that I've heard anybody else say really, when I began to have that relationship with my soul, I began to realize what Christ consciousness is all about. I had an experience of Christ consciousness. Now, you and I, as growing up at the Christian church,
Oh, I didn't
Jesus.
grow up with the Christian
Oh,
church. I
you didn't.
wasn't
Okay,
involved. I wasn't involved until I was 30 years old,
got
so
it.
it was very
But
different.
our experience of our Christianity was that was Jesus Christ. See, I thought Jesus when I was little that Jesus's last name was Christ.
Right, right.
Uh,
Not that it was not that it was more of an adjective.
that's correct. But what I learned as a result of my exploration is that all of our teachers, Buddha and and Lao Tzu and uh,
That's plenty, yeah.
all
Buddhist
of the
Lao Tzu.
spiritual teachers have really had a similar experience, and that they were all Christ. In fact, Krishna, going all the way back to the very early days of Hinduism and the Bhagavad Gita and so forth. Same terminology. So I think that all of these folks had a experience of Christ consciousness, and as a result, they were elevated in their awareness. They turned around and taught that to their followers. Unfortunately, all of that got turned into religion, and instead of here's how to experience such things, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah, here
think
are the rules you follow that makes you worthy of experience, but without really telling you what the experience is about. I
right, or
just,
even how to get there, or
yeah,
how to have that
precisely.
experience. But I
Precisely.
think that's
Yeah.
what they were all trying to point to is I've had this experience and you can have this experience too. So I think when you have that sense of when you have an experience of soul contact, you also have a hit on, maybe just a little hit on Christ consciousness. And that's what's available to you is an expanding into that and then into knowing and understanding what that's all about. Knowing and understanding the same awareness that our other master teachers had in their lifetime.
You know what I'm wondering? The way you're using soul is that I almost get a feeling that there's a strong interplay between soul and the divine in our life, that
Yes,
they're almost saying, do
same.
you look at it, it's just, what's occurring to me, this is really weird. So just say, Charlie, that's really weird. Just don't even talk about it. But is soul like our email address or phone number for God to contact us? Is that the way that
Well,
God contacts us?
I do think it's a channel. I think it's a channel. I think it's
So yeah, so a
our
telephone number and email. Yeah.
personal channel. 44.5 on the Soul Channel.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Okay. Yeah. It was funny. I was talking to my wife yesterday on the phone, and I'm at a point in life where I'm looking at retirement. I am I've been retired a decade. Work is not necessary. My wife, I mean, it would be not necessary for both of us, but my wife still works and my wife does quite well. As a matter of fact, I say not only am I a kept man, I'm a well kept man. She does extremely well. Like while I was at the Abbey at the monastery this week, she was out working in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So God bless her. But we were talking about opportunities for me and Blair. This it was opportunities for two. She's getting involved in spiritual direction, and she would really like me to get involved in spiritual direction. I mean, I have a spiritual director, but to get some information and start make myself available as a spiritual director.
Uh-huh.
That, and then there's another idea of a couple of programs that I work very, very, very. I'm very involved with the Center of Action and Contemplation and Richard Rohr and his group, and I'm very involved with some of the leaders of that group, and I have a couple of ideas of, their mission is equipping people to live contemplative, deeply contemplative, meditative lives in Christ. That contemplation is deep Christian living, is the way they would put it. And I have a couple of program ideas that are that I know the group well. I meet with them. Matter of fact, I'm leaving this afternoon. I'm going to Albuquerque. for a conference with the Center of Action and Contemplation. And I want to present these to the proper programming people and say, I've got a couple ideas that I think would really help our audience and help our people. But I have no idea where that would go, Blair. But my point is, they've given me a direction. I was sort of directionless, that I don't know if I'm going to be a spiritual director. I don't, I can do the job, but I can't do the marketing. If it calls for marketing and going out and getting people, I'm
Yes.
done. I mean, I've got a handful of friends that would love for me to direct them spiritually. So, I would have 3, 4, 5 people that would be interested right away, and that would be plenty on my list. If I had 2 people I was doing that with, that would be plenty. But I'm not guaranteed those, but they give me hope, and it is something that I am now contributing rather than being a user of life, being an active participant and contributing. As Aristotle said, the purpose of human beings is to contribute to the value of the society. And that's what I want to do, is contribute to the value. Does any of that make any sense to you?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And
I mean, you must have felt it right after you lost your job. Not only what do I do? I mean, I've got the economic thing, but I've also got an existential issue of what am I going to do that's meaningful? I don't want to go out and just earn a dollar.
yes,
I want to earn a dollar doing something meaningful.
understand that. And in the Buddhist tradition, that's called right livelihood. That is doing something that's meaningful to others and of service to others. And I think that's where people who, as they evolve spiritually, begin to have a greater and greater inclination to do such, to find some way to be of service to people. Um, um, and what I would say to you it sounds like you're getting a nudge in that direction, and that it is worth exploring and and doing and seeing where it goes. What you don't know is where it's going to go, but
I
it
have no
will.
idea. I don't know,
But it
or
will.
if
It
it's going
will
to go.
exactly. But it'll evolve in some fashion or another. It'll
Yeah.
evolve. It'll be meaningful for a few people, but then those few people may tell other people, and it may, by virtue of just referrals, um, reputation, that may happen. It may be that it it deepens your podcast um, experience and ability to help people. Um, so I think you have to listen to those nudges. You have to listen
Yeah,
to that
yeah, yeah.
still small voice,
Absolutely.
which has promptings for you. But you have to get quiet enough to listen, and you have to trust enough to give it a try.
The thing that's interesting that I brought up in this context is that when I had these ideas, one idea came to me from somebody else, but it resonated. The spiritual director came from somebody else. That was not initiated by me,
Yes.
by my thought. And it synced with my soul, with who
Yeah.
I am.
Mhm.
And the other ideas were just ideas that I would love to say have been, well, one idea has been percolating, but they came together. And when they came together, it was, I've got to present these to the CAC because I think they will make a big difference. I mean, I think, we talk about one aspect that they're doing to people that impacts the lives of 400 people come to school and do things. I'm not talking 400. I'm talking this would impact 40,000. This would be, because they have more than 1 million people on there,
I see.
that are part of their contact list. But what's interesting? It's on your connection with the soul and with the divine, and me asking you, how do you know if it's true? I don't know how I know, Blair, but I know this is of God. Whether it happens or it doesn't
Charlie, I don't
happen,
know what just happened,
it
but
doesn't make a difference. I
uh,
know this is God.
the screen is
I
frozen.
just I know. It's a
Do you know if
sensation.
you can
It's a
do anything on
feeling.
your end, and can you hear me?
It's
All of a sudden, it
but I am just certain
just
at it.
froze, and you said I.
Oops, I've got you frozen. I think maybe you've got your internet is. I'm getting audience. I'm getting
Any
a
sense of what
hit- my
would be helpful to do
Blair's computer is
to
linking up. It looks like
increase
it's on now. Let's see, is it
the
coming up?
screen? There we go.
There we go. Okay, so did you get my question, or did you hear
I
anything
asked
I
the question
said?
again. No, ask the question again. You started to say I, and then the screen froze.
Okay, I need to think where I was because I got into a diatribe. Um, is that I know I know this was true. I know this was of my soul. This
Yes.
was not just, oh, let's go, you know, I
You know,
want to write a book.
you asked me earlier how you know. You just
Yeah, that
know.
was what I was saying. I was just answering my own question.
Yeah, you
And
know.
my own question is, I don't know how I know, but I
Yeah,
know.
you know.
But it's
Right.
there. It is a sensation. It is a feeling. I think what it does is it resonates so deeply with my core self. It
Yeah,
resonates deeply with who I am.
yeah. It really hits your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the beauty of this is, what's really nice when you get to my age and we're kind of financially okay, is I don't have to do this for money.
Yes.
I mean, my ministry, I've never ever charged for doing ministry. I, you know, I, when I'm doing business, I did coaching of CEOs of billion-dollar companies. I charge, brother. I mean, that was where they had plenty of cash and I could use their cash, and so I did. But with ministries, so it's just purely for the pleasure, and 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 if it resonates with the soul, what better than that? What is there
Yes.
better than that?
Absolutely. And if you can serve with people, even serve people, and even just one person, you know, make a
Agree.
difference in one person's life, you have done a tremendous service to that person and to yourself ultimately.
Maybe we're talking about the next topic I wanted to talk about. Maybe we're already starting to talk about this, but you have in your tools, I read about you have what you call a soul contract. And I didn't read anything about the soul contract, so I'm curious. What is a
Yeah.
soul contract?
Well, I think all of us, um, when we come to planet Earth, have a plan, and that we choose our parents, that we choose our lives, and that we have some sense of what we want to accomplish this time around, um, in this time, this life on Earth, and that there are certain things then that our soul has helped us develop this. Okay, this is what we want to do with this lifetime together.
Maybe can I
Um,
can I add something here before you go deeper?
yes,
It is also in line. Our soul and our soul contact is in line with our limitations and our excellencies in talents and skills. We don't have a wide open scope that we can do anything. Like I'm never going to be able to play basketball. I'm 5'8". It's just not going to happen.
right.
But I mean, I can play with basketball. I can hang out on the court and have fun. But I'm not gonna be one of the go-to guys.
Yes,
But if it talks about ideas such as we're talking about, that now we're in my wheelhouse. So it has to be sort of, I mean, we come to, as in your terms, we come to this lifetime, but we have a boundaried set of talents and skills and goals, right?
I think so. And again, we've got these biomechanical vehicles and they have whatever limitations they have, and we have this onboard computer, we have whatever limitations that has. Um, um, and then we have the potential for soul contact, which has a degree of unlimitedness about it. But it's a spiritual unlimitedness. It's not, can we perform as a 5'8", a point guard, for
Yeah, there are
professional
those
wrestling.
that can do it, but they have other skills that I don't have besides just height.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, um, we come in with those parameters. And I think often we say to ourselves, this lifetime I want to make soul contact, but for whatever reason, it never happens. So maybe it's next lifetime. Um, I think spiritual breakthrough is something that is all is part of the destiny that we all have. And why not in this lifetime is basically the question that I have. Why not now? Why not explore the possibility of soul contact in this lifetime? Because it's one of the key um, markers of development uh, um, for the consciousness that we are in our eternity, in our path of eternity, is breakthrough, is awakening. Um, so why not now? If there's any inclination, if there's any nudge in that direction, follow that nudge, because it's just waiting. It's a whole world. It's a whole world waiting to be explored.
Love it. I want to proceed to my that has to do with soul contract. I want to talk about Christ consciousness, but I must tell you of my experience at the Abbey, at the monastery. And I'm there 3 days every month. I have a spiritual director, and we had an amazing talk yesterday. Um, but you know what I use? I go to a Benedictine Abbey, and I participate in one, two, three, four offices per day, where we are basically doing the Gregorian chant or the Benedictine chants through the Psalms, and it's all Psalms and it's all Word of God. And I tell you, that is one way, not the only way. That is one way that God speaks to me, but I read the scripture differently than I did when I went to a conservative Baptist seminary 40 something years ago. Um, there was a time in my life I read the Bible for information, just learning, give me information. I no longer read for information. I've read the text a few times, and I read it pretty much daily, but I read for inspiration. Not so I read. It's a process called Lectio Divina, which I only read in the text, in the biblical text. Typically, I will read a paragraph or two and stop and ponder, and that's the source of my meditation. But that is the way God informs. One of the ways. I mean, there are other ways. I mean, through just through creativity and my imagination is one way that God speaks to me. But this is the voice of God. Is this and this leads me, and it is the holy text that leads me to Christ consciousness. I'm extraordinarily, like, off the chart Trinitarian. I'm St. Bonaventurean Trinitarian, that the Trinity is the Scripture, is God, and that everything must be done through the Trinity. But Christ is, has there are three unique roles. Christ has a unique role as Son and as the representative of God on earth. And Christ had a consciousness on earth, um, and you know, almost more. It's Christ consciousness, but let's not talk about Christ. Let's talk about Jesus. We talked about, that Christ is not his last name. I think I always prefer putting the article in there and calling it Jesus the Christ.
Okay. Yeah.
That
Really
is
it's a really spiritual title or designation,
a designation. Yeah.
having reached a certain level of consciousness.
Yes. Yes. Um, um, so, so what is, how does Jesus display the Christ consciousness? Since he is the Christ, but he is
Yes.
but I want to talk about the human Jesus.
Yes.
You know,
Well, his life was, um, once he had his own breakthrough, his life was a life of Christ consciousness. And he said, I think, one very important thing, which is overlooked, never heard much emphasis on it in my spiritual training, um, which is that the kingdom of heaven lies within you. So what he was saying is that that imprisoned splendor, which Browning talks about, which is just there and wanting to come out, we have to find a way to allow that imprisoned splendor to come out. That kingdom of heaven, that um, that Christ consciousness. I mean, I think it's all talking about the same thing, which is an experience of the divine, an experience that you were talking about of inspiration, not information, but inspiration. You're looking for that spark that kind of takes you out of your human mind and into your divine mind. So I think we all have a divine mind, have consciousness, have a have soul, um, and that what we're what I crave, what what we're craving once we begin to explore this is experience, is a sense of illumination, um, and I think that's what's available. And as you said, there are many ways that you can go there. I mean, you can go there through um, uh, reading the scriptures and being inspired by that.
that is one way. That's not my only way,
Gregorian,
but that
Gregorian
is
sacred music is another way.
right.
Um, um, Developing mindfulness practices.
Right.
I like to talk about our sacred senses. Um,
Oh,
we have senses: seeing, tasting, touching, all of that. But then there's a sacred element to that, which is a mindfulness practice. Um, and one of them is just a sacred breathing, just a breathing that has that intent of spiritual experience, or seeing or looking that has an intent of spiritual experience. Um, um, it's a shift in consciousness within the seeing experience. Um, I like to use the story that I had of going at one point into a grocery store, and it was my intent going in to have an experience of sacred seeing going into the grocery store. And so I fuzzed my eyes up a little bit. I took some sacred breaths. I got myself into a state of a meditative state, a mindfulness state, um, and went in, and the place sort of lit up. Um, and I began to see people and their essences and their auras, as opposed to just, people who I'm judging in some fashion or another, about the clothes that they had on, or the way that they walked, or their femaleness, or their maleness, or their, you know how we do in judging people. I was seeing them as their essences as opposed to their humanness, and my judgment about that. Um, and as I just sort of, you know, smiled or interacted with people, I mean, it was sort of a magical experience. So, um, you can see, you can hear people. I mean, you were talking about working with people. The thing that would be ultimately very helpful to people that you might be working with and guiding is to hear them with your sacred ears, to hear what's behind what they're saying, to hear the um, the divine and the mundane. Um,
I must ask you here because this is really important.
yes,
Is that something? I mean, it sounds as if that's not a normal part of life, that one must put oneself in a state of receiving spiritually, as it were, receiving. And I love this. There is whatever, what do we have? Six senses, five senses? How
five
many?
senses. Yeah, yeah,
Five. So
yeah.
this is a sixth sense. The sixth sense is this spiritual listening, this spiritual hearing, these spiritual ears that you hear and see and feel, and your beautiful word, you experience something very different.
Correct. Yeah. So that's available. I mean, so mindfulness is a path. Um, walking in nature, and opening yourself up to the spiritual dimension of being in nature. Um, the many in my book on mindfulness. I have a number of exercises that I offer, but what you're looking for with mindfulness exercises is a trigger to kind of shift consciousness. So I have a little angel uh, pinned to my door frame as I go out in and out of the front door, and I touch it, and that's a trigger to remember.
Oh,
It's a trigger to remember. I have a little card here on my computer, and it says, "Live Christ consciousness." Um, it's just and I look at it, I go, "Oh yeah," because a lot of times
I love
we're
triggers.
just doing our human mind, and we're just doing our human thing, we're just bebopping along. But the beauty of mindfulness exercises, or mantras, or whatever you want to call them, and there are all kinds of things that you can do, uh, is that they act as a trigger. It act as a trigger to remember to remember.
I love that. I'm thinking just, I'm not Roman Catholic, but we don't agree theologically on some things, but spiritually, I find no large religious denomination that does spirituality better than the Catholics. The Catholics do spirituality so well. And one thing they have, triggers, or several triggers they use, but one thing that is very common, very, very common, that, you know, most Catholics, especially younger Catholics, well, I don't know especially, but Catholics are very familiar with the rosary.
Yes,
Um, but what the rosary is really a trigger, is it not?
correct.
It's triggering thoughts, and it's triggering you to go off into another dimension. Now, if the abuse of the rosary is just to go through those rote. And if
Correct.
you go through those rote, it's really not triggering anything. Nothing's really going on. You're
Nothing's
you're
happening.
speaking it, and you're feeling good. You're feeling like you feel like I accomplished something. I don't know if you
Yeah.
feel good. I've never gone through a rosary, so I couldn't tell you what the feeling is. But it is a trigger, and that I love the idea of the angel at your door, that you touch it, and and even though it becomes a habit, even the habit becomes just part of your nature, and it shifts you into another mindset. I think that's beautiful.
Yes.
Let's go with my last question before we end, and I was reading a new philosopher. He sounds Spanish, but I'm not sure. It's Fernando Pessoa. Sounds pretty Spanish, but I can't tell you for sure because I don't know. It could be something else. But he writes this. Check this out. Your path is one of staying true to your own solitude. That is, true to your own secret knowledge. That seems to fit right in with what you're saying.
Absolutely.
What do
Yeah.
you think about that? Tuning into your own secret knowledge. Do you, and the first thing, do you even know? Are you even aware of your own secret knowledge?
Um, if you are, you are, and if you're not, you're not. And if you're not, it's as if it doesn't exist. And if you are, it's very obvious. So that's the first thing that I would say. Um, and
So,
most
so,
and most of us from birth to death don't even ever have that experience or have them very seldom,
do you
and
think
it's
that's
not
true that most of us
and it's
don't have that?
that it's not that we might have inspirations, but then it doesn't turn into lifestyle. And what we're talking about is
Oh,
turning it into a lifestyle, a way of interacting with yourself and the world, in which the world is sacred and everything around you is sacred. It becomes a totally different experience than just be bopping along, and our mind is going chatter, 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 and it's reflecting on the past, and it's projecting into the future, and it's trying to protect you from harm, and it wants to be in control. But that's what you want to transcend, is the chatter, 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 and the mind control. You want to transcend that into a spiritual dimension.
you know what makes me wonder? Do you think those of us that are mm, the adjectives, there are several adjectives, but reflective introverts? I'm an introvert, and so I spend time reflecting. Do you think we have an advantage over extroverts who are so need people and so need conversation and so need being involved in the lives of other people that they get busy with that and they haven't the time to sit and reflect. I have written over and over and over for years. I said I rewrite, sort of my what is the depth and quality of my, to use your word, of my soul. What is going on? What is the authentic me? And what does that look like? And then, so I live in a world that ponders these things. What about, what about people that live in a world that's just filled with activity?
Well, it's distracting, certainly, from contemplation. Um, and increasingly, our world is filled with distractions, from social media to political,
Right.
theatrical, to, um, I mean, it seems like there's an acceleration of the domination of ego. Um,
Not to mention our own personal distractions. So we
exactly,
have
exactly, precisely. Um, so, but I think all of us have that imprisoned splendor within us, and whether we are extroverts or introverts, um, it's there and available.
right.
And in a way, it's trying to find what method is your method, what practices, what um, uh, undertakings speak to you, because ultimately you have to find your own path, and everybody's path is different, and is your particular way. So the question isn't, I don't think, is any one particular path um, uh, universal, but if interested, if anything that we've said today sparks um, uh, a desire to explore further, then it's a matter of, okay, what works? My meditation tool practices, mindfulness practices, um, manifestation practices don't interest plenty of people. And on the other hand, it interests some people. So
Well, it's
it's
a subject
something
that
that's
doesn't
is
interest a
something
lot of
that
people. Yeah.
is helpful. So
So they can,
if you're interested, explore.
so one of the exploration processes would be to, which I've got in the show notes, to pick up a copy of your book, the
Yes,
meditation book,
yes,
which you're going to give tools, which you offer tools how to do this,
that's right.
not just what it is, but you offer tools how to achieve this and how to discover this.
And I'm also let's put this on the show notes too. The amazing benefits of meditation that's available free, and
Yeah, I've
all
got
you
that
have
on
to
the
do
show notes, bro.
just go to the website and get a copy of that, and I'll put you on my email list, and I'll send you a little spiritual inspiration once a week.
I love that. So let's close with that people would check out your book, check out your website, and get a copy of the free book, and which is very gracious of you. Um, I I'm a big believer in free, uh, and because it becomes very affordable, and especially if it's good. And listening to you, I think it's going to be good. I haven't read it, but I think it's going to be good. Listen, Blair Abee, Blair Abee, I did it again. I want to do a soft A. Blair Abee, thank you for spending so much time with me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. Namaste. The eternal being in me acknowledges the eternal being in you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I also want to thank everyone for tuning in to the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.